All right, welcome back. Frank and Jill Show. Alvin Reed from Donnybrook fame and the St. Louis American, which, by the way, has an incredible sports section because one of my close friends, Earl Austin Jr., runs it. It's just spectacular, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. If it's about high school sports, Earl knows the name, the time, his father, his mother. He knows it all.
The phrase is, if he's got game, Earl knows his name.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
And we have Dr. Anita Manion in the house. She is the assistant professor of political science at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Been there for 10 years. You must have started when you were 8.
Yeah, 8 or 12, something like that, for sure.
You were standing out there talking on the phone. I said, who's the high school student? They must be out of school already.
Oh, you guys are flattering me. I like it.
Exactly, yeah. By the way, answer our one poll question today. If you could go watch any comedian, and money wasn't an issue because some of these tickets are so expensive, I would go Chappelle. You're going to go with?
I'd go with Nikki Glaser.
Okay.
Well, I've seen Chappelle, and I have tickets to Nikki Glaser, who's coming.
Okay.
But, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are touring right now, and I would love to see them.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and I think they're brilliant together.
What was your Chappelle price on the ticket? Do you remember?
It was like $200, but it was Chappelle and Chris Rock.
Oh,
when they came to St. Louis
when they
a couple
came to
years
St.
ago.
Louis.
Yeah, it was worth it.
What's the most you ever paid to see a sporting event or a
a sporting event? I haven't really paid that much.
Okay, yeah, pretty much.
The Final Four tickets I've bought before, but gosh, I don't know. Do you know off the top of your head what yours?
When the Cowboys played at the Chiefs 3 years ago, after the fees and all that, it was almost $300.
$300.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
It was on the 40-yard line.
Okay, that's one thing, because that's happens only 8 times a year in Dallas.
Yeah.
Howard Richards just went to a Dallas NBA game. I think he paid $350 a ticket for a Tuesday night.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
Journalism became out, so I can't wait to.
All right, let's talk some politics.
Sure.
How important, or is it important at all, for all of this Biden revelation stuff to come out? Of course, the Jake Tapper book, where the biggest revelation is there's talk about he would have had to use a wheelchair if he would have actually gotten in. They couldn't use it during the campaign or he would have no chance. But do you think it's necessary, and what's your whole take on all this stuff coming out?
I mean, I think this happens after every administration. After the Trump administration, we saw several expose books, and now after the Biden administration, we're seeing this. And particularly, the Democrats are really frustrated by the loss to Trump, and I think they're trying to reflect. And there's still some finger-pointing, and I think this book is part of that. Should Biden have gotten out early? Would that have helped the Democrats defeat Trump in the election? And I think the argument in this book is he should have gotten out earlier.
Well, that's how I believe it. I mean, earlier, 2 years after he got elected, not just by not running for re-election. Shouldn't even came to all that. Yeah. So, and I don't look the undocumented sources and kind of the backbiting.
That's the only way you get information.
I understand, and I'm not saying that I don't believe most of it, but in any of these books, there's some of it that I would contend simply is not true. So, because that's just the nature of people talking.
Yeah,
it's. If somebody wrote one on me, I'd probably go through it and say about 90% of that is right. But there's 10%. Yeah, there's 10% that's just, I ain't do all that now. Right?
So Chuck Schumer took some heat just 48 hours ago by not answering any questions about this. And he kept saying, we got to move forward. We got to move forward, which I got to tell you something. If I'm in his position, I think I'd probably do the same thing. I don't blame him at all. But I'm wondering, how much blame should the media get for not covering it while it was unfolding?
I think there's a certain respect for the office of the president that still exists, and at the same time, what are you going to do? I mean, you couldn't make the man come take a test or anything to see, are you still all there?
Well, they kind of did, and then the reports didn't come out till after the election.
Yeah, and so what could you do?
Yeah. Well, and I do think some things, like when he would drift off, at the end of a speech, literally physically walk away and sort of seem lost. I do feel like a lot of that was covered. We saw those clips played over and over. But I guess, was there a digging in and a trying to get from his staff and insiders more of a story of what was happening?
Right. So, if you're in charge of the Democratic Party right now, and I know you can't really control Joe Biden right now, but he's the most talked about Democrat for the last week. BBC, The View, and then, of course, all the book coming out. Isn't there a part of you boy, let's just end this thing and move on, and let's start thinking about the next guy or woman?
Absolutely. And I think Democrats as a party, members of the party, are really frustrated right now because they don't feel like there's this new leadership or a pivot to how are they going to stand up for Trump. You know, to your point, they see Biden as in the past. Let's look to the future. And we see like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie Sanders touring the country and holding rallies with like tens of thousands of people. And I think that's the direction that Democrats would like to view rather than the past.
Well, that ain't gonna. That ain't going to play. And I think, you know, the governor of Illinois, his speech that he made in New Hampshire.
If you didn't know he was running before,
you did know he was
now.
running for president, you knew after that speech.
That's right.
So, yeah, I think I know what he's got on his mind. It's going to be somebody young, it's going to be somebody white, and it's going to be somebody who's a male.
I was just about to say, I don't think it's going to be a woman.
Even though AOC has the most talent, and she's the most dynamic, and she's the best on camera. There's others, like, look, everybody's got flaws. Like Pritzker, how are you going to be the president when the state of Illinois is the state of Illinois? And Gavin Newsom, who also has great talent, how are you going to be the president if California's in that state?
Because I don't think that's necessarily held against you in a presidential election. You can
Even though you look at the body of work of the state you run?
Yeah, you could beat them over the head and say, like, look, my state is one of the most prosperous in America. California. My state is one of the most prosperous in California. My state, California and Illinois, could say, like, for all the jibber jabber coming from these smaller states, wherever, we pay your taxes. We pay for the right to be messed up, liberal, whatever. You don't. You know, you do not put as much toward the federal government. Your budgets aren't as large. You don't handle as many people. You're not trying to put out as many fires as we are. So, yeah, I'm going to be president, and it'll be just fine. I mean, if you were from Missouri, all right, what are we going to put out there that, you know, somebody's running from Missouri and say, like, oh, yeah, Missouri, man, it's top flight.
I guess maybe you should ask Josh Hawley.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because I think that's a Missourian who's planning on running.
You're 48th in education.
Yeah.
Your bridges are falling into the river.
Wait a minute, we are 48th now?
Yeah, like funded education.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
It's terrible.
Okay, find me a flaw with this Democratic candidate. I've yet to find one. It's Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, who really is smart, great on camera, and the state, there's actually a lot of positive things. Where's the flaw?
No, I was just going to say, I think you're right about the perceptions of some of the more liberal candidates, whether it's AOC or Newsom or others. And there's energy for that in the Democratic base. When we talk about broad appeal, you have your Gretchen Whitmers, your Josh Shapiros. And I do think that the Democratic Party is looking back and saying, should Josh Shapiro have been the VP candidate? You know, he comes from a swing state. He's more moderate, has sort of that more centrist appeal. I think the issue of Israel and Gaza was so charged in November. That was one reason that they steered away from him.
You'd risk alienating a portion of your party?
No, I think that was last November. I think by the time we're talking 2028, that's not a liability for him.
And I got the feeling that he was – I think he saw writing on the wall and didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
He knew it was a losing cause?
Or I don't think I can make a difference at this point. So I'm going to ride it out here in Pennsylvania, and 4 years is a short period of time.
You're also get a little more experience,
right?
Too.
And you know, you're talking about while he's saying he's going to run again, he's not going to run again. So it's going to be two different people, and it'll be two names that America is not totally familiar with that'll probably be running for president.
So look into your crystal ball, what would you think is next for Kamala Harris? Is she going to be the governor of California, the president of the United States, or kind of a spokesperson?
Yeah, I think she's really trying to figure that out. I think as much as she might want to run again in a more a traditional length campaign.
Not 107 days.
Right. But I think it's really hard after you lose to go again. Now, granted, Trump just did it. You can do it. But
Nixon did it.
She didn't succeed in the primary in 2016. And I think it's going to be really hard for her to win the primary.
I don't think she'll run for president again. I don't know why. I don't know if she's going to run for governor of California or not. I think she'll just become like a stateswoman. And I think what will happen is ultimately a Democrat will win the White House again, and then she'll probably end up in a major role in the administration.
All right, let's talk next up for the Republicans. Let's just say, and this is a huge assumption, that in 4 years we're going to look back on this run as it was good. Let's just say that the border stays clean, wars are canceled, and inflation is down. Let's just say that happens. Is it automatically J.D. Vance, or does Marco Rubio slip in there?
I don't think it's automatically J.D. Vance.
Agreed.
But even if it's successful?
Even if it's successful, I don't think it's automatically him.
Okay.
But I don't know who comes out of that pact.
Wouldn't Rubio be the other?
Trump usually speaks of those two in the same breath these days, right? So I think that he has elevated Rubio in that sense. Rubio might have more appeal. J.D. Vance, if you remember during the campaign, wasn't particularly adept.
Yeah.
He had some flubs.
Yeah, I won't be J.D. Vance.
Okay.
He might win, but I'm just saying it is not going to be a slam dunk whatsoever.
Right, let's go local. Your impressions of the mayor so far early on here in St. Louis.
Yeah, it's interesting because unlike the presidential transition, the mayor literally has a week. And so, she's still in the process. She's hired some people. She's put together some advisory boards, but she's still in that process because there's no transition time. So you sort of are building the plane while you're flying it. I think she really ran on public safety and public services and what happens immediately, sinkholes, and now we have the video from Holly Hills. So, but that's St. Louis. That's the mess that she took on. And I think she's done a fairly good job, at least, of sort of saying we acknowledge this is a problem. I think people want to hear that when in the past sometimes we've heard deflection. And so I think that acknowledgement is important, but she's got to put the meat behind it. So I know she's hired a new streets director, is working on some of those things.
Too early to tell, really,
Yeah.
but we interviewed the interim SLDC president, Otis Williams. It's in the paper this week. He one thing was that he said the economic justice plan that was put in place during the previous administration, that will continue. Now, I don't, he's only the interim, so we'll see. But he also said that Mayor Spencer contacted him while she was candidate Spencer about replacing Neil Richardson on a temporary basis, which basically I'm not saying that she lied, but she was always she made it like I have not decided to, take this job from or work to take Neil Richardson out of this job. Well, she had reached out, and Otis confirmed that. He had reached out during the election. So just a little bit of, I know how politics works. You still have. And let me put it this way. I don't weep to Mayor Jones that she lost, and she lost by as big an amount as she did. That's politics. That's kind of what it was her work that led to this. However, there were parts of that campaign that I did not care for, and I think Kara Spencer has to recognize that there are a lot of people who said, like, look, you won fair and square. It's all good. I'm not here to defend Tashara. I didn't like how this went down. And I think at some point she's going to have to address that.
You just brought up streets. Just a side note. And Alvin and I are of age. You're just a youngster. But I can't even remember growing up this many potholes all over the freaking city.
Right.
And it's not just the city. I mean, Olivet, Olive Street Road, Lindbergh, Creve Coeur. I'm driving home last night, 11 o'clock. I thought for sure my tire was going to be smashed. I mean, when did this become like a big thing in St. Louis?
Well, I tell you what.
Crazy.
It's okay. I was joking about it, but the boil order we had. Well, that's because there was something blew down by the water plant. But when the water was coming through or not coming through, it blew several more and you got closer to downtown Kirkwood. It's old, Frank. It's just like that's the
aging
thing.
infrastructure, for sure.
We have aging infrastructure and the streets sinking. Over there by Cass. They were saying the pipes were 100 and some odd years old. Now think about this now. Like in a city that used to have, hundreds of thousands of more people, those pipes were taking a lot of water. Oh. All right. And so now here we are 100 years later and they're blowing and the streets are cracking and everything it's just old. And I don't know. I can't find $3 billion to repave the city and change all the pipes, but that's basically it. I mean, you're not making it up. This is not false narrative. It's falling apart, but it really isn't anybody's fault.
Right. Well, and part of the challenge that Mayor Spencer is going to have is the mayor in St. Louis is not all powerful. If she wants to allocate money to streets or budget, she has to work with the comptroller, newly elected, and the president of the Board of Aldermen, Megan Green, which there's already some tension there with them over this lawsuit regarding the police and other things. So, and then she's going to have to work with the Board of Aldermen, which she has experience there, and they've spoke nicely of her, but, she's going to have to manage all those relationships.
All right, take us into a poli-sci class in 2025 at UMSL. Is there a lot of debate and you're exchanging ideas with students? And tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Actually, the first day of every class I teach, we do a small group activity on civil discourse. how can we respectfully disagree with each other? How do we make sure the information that we're using to bolster our arguments is actually factual? Where do we get good information? And how do we actually listen to each other? And I think that is what we are missing in our political discourse. We're not listening. We're not trying to learn from each other. We're trying to out-yell each other.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's what we need. But let me just ask you this. If Trump behaved politely like McCain and Romney, would he have won the 2 times?
I think he would have. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay,
I do.
So you don't need a killer who's constantly saying nasty things about
Well, I think that helped, and I think
that's how he got the nomination.
Right.
Yeah.
It differentiates him, but then also it's what folks don't like about him.
Right.
Right?
Well,
It's
like
a double-edged
low-energy
sword.
Bush,
Right.
little Marco, just knocked them all off the stage one by one.
Yeah, pretty much. And I've often said that, well, okay, bullies need to get punched in the nose, and then they don't bully people anymore. And, the party didn't stand up to him, and thus he's been the president twice. I still think within the Republican Party, I'm sure there are people that said, this is going to be one of the worst things that ever happened in this party, because we're not going to get back some of what we have lost.
Yeah.
And that's, and the same could be true with, Democrats, because you say you got a little bit too far out there. And there's a lot of people that don't come on TV and say I want to leave, this transgender people, alone. I don't want any harm to come to them, but I don't understand, why we are the party that has to encompass everything and everybody. So, yeah. So both are probably, like you say, both are kind of finding themselves in where are we going to be? Not 4 years from now or what, 2028, but 2032. I don't think either party knows what are we going to look like? What are we going to sound like? What are we going to be doing?
Before I let you go, one final plug for UMSL. Mm-hmm. It's one of the few schools that if you go there, you're not going to have like student loan bills till you're like 35. You guys are still really affordable, which is awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I love about it is my brother went there and has zero college debt. He had enough scholarships, grants. He was able to do the honors program, be in the Lit Mag, do all these great things. Meanwhile, I went to private universities, and I'm still paying off that student debt.
My daughter got her master's there.
That's
Bryce
great.
got her master's in education at UM St. Louis.
I'm a proud alum myself. All right, great stuff. Anita, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We'll take a short break. This is the Frank and Jill Show on the Big 550 KTRS. Big 550 KTRS. Big 550 KTRS.